probably join us at 1:30. Well, it is 1 p.m. and we will get started. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting on the 17th day of May, 2021. I now call this meeting to order. Looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Seed.
Move to approve the Committee of the Whole agenda for Monday, May 17th, 2021 as presented.
Seconder. Councillor Peterson. Any additions or anything to add? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. We'll move down to administration reports. And we'll start with our City Manager Smith.
Sorry about that. So your Worship and Council, this afternoon I have two items for Council's consideration and direction. The first is the Freedom of the City request. The purpose of this report is to investigate the possibility of number 38 Combat Engineer Regiment being granted Freedom of the City of Warman to coincide with their 10th anniversary of the regiment. Given the existing relationship that we have with the regiment and specifically 46 Engineer Squad, being part of the Remembrance Day ceremonies for quite some time, it may be fitting to provide this honor to them. I've attached for Council's review and information a letter that was received from Captain Fisher providing some additional information on the history on their request for granting the honorary Freedom of the City, but also some background information in the request itself. There's a recommendation from administration, and the recommendation is that we grant the Freedom of the City to the 38 Combat Engineer Regiment, specifically 46 Engineer Squadron, to coincide with their 10th anniversary of the regiment, and further that the item be brought forward at the next regular council meeting for consideration if council so desires. So that's the first item, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. And just a bit of background, I know City Manager Smith brought this to me back in January, and I had to do a little bit of looking and what is he talking about? And then I said, let's take this to all of council. And we're really talking a year from now that they're able to do this parade. So just that, making sure I understand what the request is that way. And I know this is also a group that's been involved in our Remembrance Day, and I just actually sent a greeting for them for their awards night too, that we do fairly quite a bit back and forth. I don't know, any questions on this to City Manager Smith? Councillor Ramage.
Thank you, Mayor Filipchuk. Not so much a question, rather I'll put my name forward as being in support of this. I recognize that the recommendation will come forward at council, but I do think with the involvement of the 46 Engineer Squadron and overall just with Remembrance Day ceremonies, I think that this is something that we can absolutely do, and I would be in support of this when it comes to council.
Okay, Councillor Seed.
Yeah, just some comments more than questions. This is the first time that I had ever heard of Freedom of the City, and what does that exactly mean? And I mean, if Gary can't do everything he wants, are we giving these guys a chance? But no, we definitely. I actually have a very close friend of mine that's a military veteran that actually used to be part of this regiment, and he very much explained to me about, although it looks very much as just hey, here's a pat on the back, this is a huge deal to them, and the fact that they have for so long supported Warman and its Remembrance Day ceremonies and just the overall honor that comes with this, I'm wholeheartedly in support of this, and I think that it would go a long way as well for those of us that are available at the point that they do parade into the city to attend where possible. It seems something very small that we can do to recognize the sacrifices that these men and women put in every single day for things that we hope we never need them for, but certainly they're well deserving of this recognition, and I would be very proud to see Warman support them in that. So thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? it was one of those ones I thought it's good to bring early just so they can plan a year from now and everybody knows there's no surprises. And I think that was sort of the key right now is that it's a parade next year, that there'll be a lot more information as it gets closer, I'm sure, to the public so they're knowing what's happening. And I'm sure our local media will get on this as we get closer to it too. Okay, City Manager. Oh, yes, Councillor Ramage.
Just one question for clarification. When we're talking about next year, are we referring to Remembrance Day ceremonies in 2021 or in 2022?
It's not the Remembrance Day. They're actually looking for June, I believe, right?
April,
oh,
I
sorry.
think.
Oh, that's right. April 14th. Yeah.
Oh, to coincide, my mistake. Just wanted to be clear on when we were referring to next year, what that entailed. So.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mention that. I mentioned it in the report, but not in my preamble here. But yes, April 14th is the anniversary. So they're looking at somewhere in that week, I believe. It could be 9th or, but they're looking somewhere in that week is when they would have a parade in celebration of their 10-year anniversary.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, City Manager Smith, you can continue.
Okay, the next item I have is the FCM Partners for Climate Change. I think Council's fairly familiar with this. It's been brought up to Council a few times in regards to milestone number 1 and also moving forward with our environmental master plan. But really the purpose of this report is just inquiring of City Council if they wish to proceed with milestone number 2 in regards to the climate protection program. Partners for the Climate Protection. It's a national network of over 400 municipalities committed to taking action on climate change. The program is there to help municipalities reduce greenhouse gas emissions and make a difference in protecting the climate. There's a 5-step milestone framework that is to guide municipalities on how to take action against climate change by reducing emissions in our city. At the October 15th, 2019 regular meeting of council, a resolution was passed approving the city of Warman become a member of the PCP and to work towards the 5 milestones, which milestone number 1 is creating a base emission inventory and forecast. Number 2 is setting the emission reduction targets, and then you would move on to developing an action plan to try to meet those targets, and then implement the local action plan and monitor the progress and results over time. On March 31st this year, the city did receive confirmation from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities that we had achieved and completed milestones number 1. So as a result of that, administration is now would like to embark on moving forward with milestone number 2, which is to set the emission targets. It is felt that an aggressive yet attainable target for the City of Warman would be to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions corporately by 20% below the baseline that's been established in milestone number 1 within the next 10 years. Once the city has established the targets, the reduction targets, our next step would be then to develop an action plan, as I've mentioned before, for the city to try to achieve those targets and monitor the results as well. So, as mentioned, this has happened, quite a few years ago that we started on this milestone adventure through FCM Partners for Climate Change. And so it is recommended, we are recommending to council that we establish the emission reduction targets for the City of Warman as per milestone number 2 at 20% by the year 2032. And further, this recommendation be brought forward to the next regular meeting of council for consideration. And in setting those targets, I guess certainly I'll answer any questions, but it could be anything. Some communities have gone, 30%. I think that this is an acceptable target, and it has been accepted by FCM and the Partners for Climate Change in other communities, and it seems to be fairly consistent. So we felt that that was a good reason to start out with that plan because it's recommended by the Partners for Climate Change as well. So that's where we got the percentage from and the years to accomplish it.
Questions?
That's it, Ranger.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Councilor Ramage.
Thanks, Mayor Philipchuk. It's certainly a worthwhile initiative, but I think my question is actually more a discussion with council in terms of confirming that this is a priority for us. I do seem to recall at the strategic planning session that I don't seem to remember much discussion about it other than just to make sure that it got on the list. And I think some of the history behind how we've got to where we are now is a little bit of the same, in fairness. Given that once we set these reduction targets and we start working towards them, that there can be operational and financial implications to that, of course, which are tied to any initiative that we take. Where does council stand on this? Because I think if we weren't 100% committed to this as a council, then I don't know that doing the resources at this time are worthwhile. Don't get me wrong. I deal with climate change and climate risk in a lot of the work that I do outside of council. But if there isn't a strong support from council to continue to move forward on the milestones, I would question if we continue to move forward. So I'd put that out for discussion.
Okay, good comment. And this is the forum. Let's hear what people have to say. I have no problem with that. Again, I guess looking at what came from the past, a lot of times we're past. This is what we're working with. And I'll let Councillor Seed. I have comments, but I'll let everybody else speak first. Councillor Seed.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk. Yeah, I mean, in general, I'm supportive of anything we can do, obviously, to reduce emissions and to make sure that we're being environmental stewards, for our community. I definitely would want to see, those baselines, the forecast, and making sure that, I'm big on tangible numbers, hard numbers. I don't want it to be a moving target, because at the end of the day, if we want to say that we're going to do 20% reduction in where we think we're going to be in 2035, and we're not even close to that, what's the point? I mean, we need to make sure that we're setting based on our forecasted growth, based on the information we have. This is the baseline. This is the target. This is where we think we'll be. And, being very, very clear that if we are going to aim for a 20% reduction, although other communities have done that, Warman's not a heavy industrial community. So I think that we have to be very aware of the fact that what can this actually take? Because we don't want to be in a situation where we say, yeah, we're going to make our 20%. And then, in the last couple of years before this deadline comes up, we're scrambling to do stuff that looks good, but in reality isn't necessarily moving that line to where we hope it will be for our community, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson.
I've right from day one on this said that I'm not really a fan. I am all for when there's two options that are similarly priced or after savings in energy and things like that. It makes financial sense. I'm all for doing things like that, or when there's options to use fuel efficient vehicles, it's not going to impact the services that we see in our city. I'm for things like that. I'm for things like planting trees to make up for carbon being put out. I'm for some environmental things like that. I'm not in favor of setting a hard target, and the reason is because I feel as a growing community that risks handcuffing us, and I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with committing huge amounts of resources and budget line items to just for the sake of having a piece of paper that says we met a target. Not in favor of things like that.
Thank you. Other councillors? Councillor Tooley?
just maybe looking for some comments here from administration on this, but I mean, I know we're kind of on the path to work towards some of these targets already with things like the changing to the LED lighting system at the Legend Center. I know that's one that's actually going to be a step towards, meeting some of these targets in the future. But I guess as our operations maybe expand and as we have more facilities and that kind of thing under the wing of the city, when we're talking about a 20% reduction, are we talking about a 20% reduction from where we are kind of right now? Or are we talking 20% reduction? I mean, how do you even measure a 20% reduction when in the future, as we build new buildings, maybe those are built with the lens of being more efficient? So how would we measure 20% of stuff that maybe is already better than where we're at right now?
Well, it's a little bit, I'm going to say it's a little bit tougher than that to answer, but yes, that's why the baseline was taken. It'll be based on those facilities, those existing facilities, how you're going to deal with that existing greenhouse gas emission. But also part of that, the whole program, and I'm sure everybody's familiar with the this document being the EMP, Environmental Master Plan.
Yeah.
In there, it has all the stuff like you talked about and everybody's talked about. Councillor Peterson had mentioned about vehicles that may save emissions and what's that cost. And those will be the things in milestone 3. You don't get to milestone 3 in this program unless you do number 2. And that's an option. We can just say, we're done with the PCP that we've been working on, and you can go right to your environmental master plan and put some of those things in place for whatever, I guess, kind of pick and choose whichever ones you wish to do. We can go that way as well. So I guess to answer your, sorry, Councillor Toohey, but to answer your question that's why you establish the baseline and the facilities and equipment that you have at that time. And how are you going to address that? Certainly, I think if we have environment in mind and we're looking at building a new arena, I think it only makes sense that we start looking at those types of things as well when we're doing that design and making those decisions. This doesn't stop you from making any decisions or having to go down a certain way. If it makes more sense to do solar panels on a new arena at some, then you look at it when you're doing construction, for instance, or you can look at existing facilities and add those types of things on as well. So it's big. It's not. I know everybody would like to see. Okay, I want to know what this looks like, and certainly there's probably communities out there. I know Regina and Saskatoon, but they have the resources to do that. What we were asked to do back in 2017. And moving forward with the environmental master plan, hard to get it going for the same reasons as everybody talks about here. But also we thought that this program would help us, give us tools, which it has, to where we are today is some milestones to get to where we thought the master plan should be. I apologize, Your Worship. That was more than what was needed.
It's okay. Other questions, Councillor Toohey?
Just I guess maybe a quick follow-up to that. And like when we're talking about reductions by 20%, is that something that, like I said, I know we've already are going through, the process right now of changing over the lighting system at the Legend Center. And is that going to be one of those targets that kind of gets us to that 20% in a fairly easy way? Or is that 20% going to be pretty onerous to get to?
No, I don't have enough information on you can, I guess until we do, we won't see. But the only reason that we're putting the LED lights in, and yes, it will be part of this reduction because the baseline was, we had it on the facility before this would be put into place. So we'd be able to see that reduction. And we could say we did achieve 1%. I'm not sure what that would be. And I don't think anybody does, Councillor Toohey. I know everybody wants that hard. I want to know that we can make it, and I want to know that we can we can do it and we can achieve it, which is great. I think that's, you set a goal and you go for it, but whether you can achieve that goal with other things that come along, there's no commitment that we have to reduce it by 20%. It's a target. Same as we do with the 10-year capital. We do a 10-year capital to kind of guide us, but in reality, are some of those things going to change? You bet. We saw them change from one year to the next. So that's but we're just trying to, the partners would like everybody to at least establish a goal or a target and go from there.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think, when it comes down to it, I think sort of part of my thinking on this is that 20% or at least moving down this path was a decision that was made by the previous council, and quite frankly, I would have had a part in being a part of that resolution that was put forward. So from that perspective, I'm in support of moving forward on that, especially when I look at it from the sense of 20% reduction isn't necessarily something we're being handcuffed to in the future. It's just a goal to keep in mind that as we're making future decisions about things like, at some point maybe doing upgrades to an ice plant, is there something that we can do when those upgrades to that ice plant are being done that can be a more energy efficient system that maybe isn't cost prohibitive? Because I also want to be mindful of whether or not something's unattainable due to cost. So anyway, that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
I was thinking along the same lines as Councillor Tooley as well. Just making sure that we, in the planning stages of what is going to come, I did get your email with the greenhouse gas emissions, and it's buildings that emit sort of the most, and that we would be looking at. So that would be something that we would be looking at in the future, with economic growth as being one of our strongholds that we would, not necessarily enforce, but look at trying to do a sustainable option and keep sustainability in the background. But again, it's like, it's those little steps, that 20%. Well, 20% could be like whatever we make it, small little things that chip away, chip away, chip away. We also have funding and grants that we can apply for and that are accessible to us. Whether it's through partners in climate change or not, I think it still needs and is still a necessary thing. 20%, again, how much, I don't know how much of a dent those lights are going to be. But again, if there's other buildings that are going up and they're putting LED in, there's another dent in it. Transportation, what do they say? 3%. Street lights was 10%. So those are some small little things that we can chip away at. It's 10 years. And I don't think it's an expensive venture. However, the long-term gains are, I guess they could be measured, but the savings is what we're looking at. I don't think we're looking at spending $1 billion right up front, right away to achieve 20%. We have 10 years to take a look at what are some things that we can do. Whether that, again, is just through the climate change program or through the environmental master plan.
Thank you. My comments, a couple comments first. First of all, did we receive funding for this? Like with FCM, I know there was a little bit of a carrot with this, that we did it and it was no cost, but we had support, and they are offering support throughout this process. Is that my understanding, that we are getting this service or this collaboration at no cost?
That's correct. That was the purpose of, we were having trouble moving forward with we didn't have the resources for the master plan, and council was asking that, we spent this money, what are we doing with the master plan? So that was our way to get the resources. So we were able to have people help us get the base, and now we have people that can help us look at the data and say, oh, okay, here would be a good place to put you're looking at LED lights. Yes, that's gonna, that type of expertise is really this partnership. What it came about was sharing of the tools, information, but also, some of the grant funding other municipalities have received, and hey, this is how we applied for it, and this is what we got. So if you want to try going down that route, perfect. So no financial, but I think resource, because council hasn't put resources, except for the initial plan in 2015-16. There hasn't been resources except for off, as I've mentioned to council on many occasions, off the side of the desk. And we've been able to accomplish this, which I think is very good, but maybe not what council wants to go, or the direction council wants to go. And we're absolutely fine with that. This is just kind of a check mark of milestone 1, 2, 3.
Okay, and I want to bring that out because there was a reason that we did this, and some of the reason was that we saw this collaboration, this partnership. To me, this one, I think it is important to stay the course, and some of that is the funding opportunities. You just look at the federal budget right now, and you look at the federal grants that are out there, and if we sort of move our name to the side, why am I getting feedback? Sorry. If we move it to the side, what's going to happen is some of these different grants that we're going to apply for, that would be something nice to say that we are a part of, we are moving towards targets. And that may be the reason we get grants in the future. Because I'm looking at what Saskatoon got for grants, and I just go, I'm a little envious. I'm a little envious of some of the things, the rapid transportation, some of the things, and we're going to want those things in the future too. We are going to want a fast way to get to Saskatoon. We're going to want different things, and some of those things will need to be done in an environmental way. So I think it's important. It is a target, their goals, and to me, this program, why I was so much on side, because I'm not saying spend a lot of money on it. As you can see, we don't budget for it. I'm more the idea, it's a lens. It's a lens to look at stuff and say, is there a better mousetrap for the same price that maybe is more efficient? We're already doing it, but it's now a measurement. Is it actually, and it goes back to Councillor Seed, are we actually, did it make a difference? Or did we get, and I know when we being part of building the high schools, if you were considered a certain type of school, you got all these different benefits because you were an energy efficient school. And so it was just, money was coming because you dealt with those issues on the forefront, and you stamped it that way, that's the way it's going to be. So I think to me, it's a lens, but it's also a financial lens, as Councillor Tooley brought up and some of the others brought up, Councillor Peterson, that I'm not willing to break the bank to be able to maybe hit a target right away. But at the same time, let's take a look. It's a lens from financial, it's a lens from environmental. We always we're in that process anyway, but now it's a bit of a report card that we are doing. I realize there's a human resource cost. I know Sarah at City Hall is spending more time on this, but in some ways we need to know how we're doing. If we don't get any sort of look at, if we want to be a leader in the country as far as many things, we have to always sort of have these things on our radar. I just look at what the current money is there and what FCM is actually pushing for. So even if we're not going to go, the federal government might change, what FCM pushes for and really pushes for the grant money, it has ties to environmental. And so I think it's important to at least stay the course. 20%, I don't know, that to me, it's like Councillor Tooley, it's an abstract number to me. It could be very easy, it could be, but I see it as a scale too. So as we build new stuff, then you just look at how the scale of different things happen along the way. So that's my comments. I don't know if anybody else, Councillor Ramage.
I think I just add on to your comments there. I do think that there is a grant funding preparedness aspect to this. FCM, from my understanding, it works, or the funding from FCM comes from Infrastructure Canada. And the more that you see in the ICIP grants or the federal grants, the more that they're starting to push not only asset management, but climate resiliency. So I do agree with that comment. I think the only caution I'd have is when we look at the practicality of any proposed solutions, where this jogged my mind was when streetlights were brought up. And in some municipalities that have moved to LED streetlights, they don't give off the same heat as the streetlights that we have right now. So you get into these, you don't even need a snowpocalypse or a major winter storm, and you have ice and snow that are now sticking to your streetlights that create a hazard. So I do think that there's some practical, just just that we as council, and I'm sure we are all aware of it, but just that practicality of what's being put forward.
Oh, good points. Any other final comments here? I know this will come to our next council meeting, but any other closing comments or City Manager Smith with this or?
Yeah, the only comment is that absolutely, if there's information that's required, before the next council meeting, that's great. We can certainly provide whatever we can, further to what the discussion here today was. But it was discussion that was expected, certainly from administration's point of view, because we get stuck in that kind of, are we going to carry on, or is this going to be too expensive? We don't know those things as well, but I want to assure the council that this is just a goal, and you hope to achieve that goal. And if you can't, there's no repercussions. We don't lose anything. I guess you would be disappointed in yourself if you didn't. If you wanted to lose 10 pounds and you didn't, well, that's, and that's kind of really the way to look at this, only on a bigger picture. I don't want to minimize it, but that kind of thing is all we're looking for, is really, and then we'll put on a regimen to how to lose that. It will be the next step 3. So.
Good, thank you for that. And I think it was, what I heard was that financial aspect comes into it, the practicality, and then it's the fiscal is obviously one of the ones that we would always have a lens on it too. So anything else, City Manager Smith, or that's it?
No, that's it. Those are my 2 items for this meeting.
Thank you. Okay, we will move down to public, or sorry, my screen went down. We will go to finance. Our manager, Rosalind Hebert.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I have 3 items for Council's consideration at today's Committee of the Whole meeting. The first item I have on my report is an amendment to the bylaw to provide for the imposition of penalties for late payment of taxes. Back in May, Council approved an amendment to the above-mentioned bylaw, amending the property tax date line from August 31st to October 31st for the 2020 tax levy to assist City of Warman residents with any financial constraints they might be experiencing due to the COVID-19 pandemic. At that time, the intention was to move the due date back to the original date of August 31st for the 2021 year. Please find attached an amended tax penalties bylaw reverting the due date for current taxes back to August 31st from October 31st. And the recommendation I have is that this bylaw at the next regular meeting of council be given all 3 readings.
Any questions? Or manager? Councillor C.
Just as some general feedback, and I certainly can appreciate you won't have all of the hard numbers in front of you, but just as a general, in your experience, did a lot of residents take advantage of that abatement or the relaxing of the due date, so to speak?
Most residents did, actually, with the due date being moved back. Most residents did not pay until the deadline, which is what we would typically see. We typically see that big influx coming in that last week prior to the deadline.
Right. And did you see any, or did you have any feedback from residents saying that had helped them or assisted them in any way?
We really didn't know.
No. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, you can continue on.
The next item I have is the mill rate bylaw. It is important to note that 2021 was a revaluation year, which utilized a base date of January 2019 to determine property assessment values for 2021. This revaluation saw across the City of Warman as a whole a total assessment value decrease. Please be aware that the Ministry of Government Relations amended the percentage of value for the commercial class from 100% to 85% to mitigate the potential impact of the revaluation to the commercial class. As additional information, prior to 2017, the City of Warman utilized a commercial mill rate factor of 1.19. The 2017 reassessment year saw a significant increase in commercial assessment in the city, partly due to commercial growth and partly due to increased commercial assessment values. Administration mitigated this increase by dropping the mill rate factor from 1.19 to 0.87. Administration would recommend with this revaluation year that council accept a recommendation that increases the commercial mill rate factor back up to 1, utilizing a uniform mill rate for the city of Warman. Administration has prepared some options for council to consider regarding tax policy. Option 1 utilizes a mill rate of 5.66 and a commercial mill rate factor of 1. Residential and commercial base tax have increased to 580 and 880 respectively. This option increases funds raised through base tax to cover services provided through transportation and policing and fire services from 65% of net loss to 70% of net loss. This, again, option also increases the commercial mill rate factor to 1 from 0.87. Option 2 utilizes a mill rate of 5.55 and again, a commercial mill rate factor of 1. Residential base tax in this option increased to 615 and commercial to 915. So this option raises funds through base tax for transportation and policing and fire services to 75% of net loss, so a little bit more. This option again also utilizes a uniform mill rate, increasing the commercial mill rate factor back up to 1. And then option 3 maintains a commercial mill rate factor of 0.87. Keep in mind that this would be in combination with the decrease in commercial percentage of value as determined by the Ministry of Government Relations. In general, option 3 or any option that maintains a 0.87 mill rate factor for commercial will result in larger impacts to residential properties and less to commercial. Both options 1 and 2 bring that mill rate factor back to 1, more evenly distributing taxation based on assessment between the residential and commercial classes. Administration recommends that council accept option 1, which increases the base tax and helps to mitigate the effects on properties seeing an increase in assessment without having as much of an impact on the lower assessed properties as option 2. Administration also recommends an option that adjusts the commercial mill rate factor to 1.
Okay, questions or comments? Councillor Peterson.
I'm just wondering why we haven't seen an option that doesn't increase the base tax.
We definitely can provide an option that does not increase the base tax as well.
Amanda, maybe on that base tax, like we do, the reason we put the increase is just because of the policy that we have of getting so much of the net from certain departments. So did you want to quickly go over that, Amanda? Or?
Yeah, so we tied the base tax into the net loss of providing the transportation and protective services, policing and fire services. And we tied the base tax into initially 60% of that net loss. And I think the intention was to slowly start to increase that so that base tax is covering the cost of providing those services. And I think the reasoning behind it is because everybody has equal access to those services.
Other questions, Councillor Peterson? That very good. Okay, Councillor Ramage, and then
thanks very much.
Yeah.
I think in general, I'm not against increasing the base tax as one of the means that we might be able to maintain that 2% overall increase year over year. It provides some predictability. I do agree with Councillor Peterson, though it would be nice to see one that doesn't increase it, just so we can look at numbers. My question has to go to, has the Chamber of Commerce been consulted on this?
So as administration, we wouldn't typically engage the Chamber of Commerce in discussions regarding tax policy. So no, to answer.
Okay, so from my perspective, and I know that we shared a little bit in the email there, and I'm very well aware that people will generally argue in support of lower taxation, myself included. But I think I found that the Chamber of Commerce typically, not only in Warman, just as a whole, can look at the broader perspective and understand certain impacts and what the city's trying to do. But I think as business owners that get taxed on commercial and their own individual properties, so in some ways it's almost a double tax situation. And we talked about at the strategic planning session, the importance of engaging the public and engaging stakeholders and having these conversations. I think it would be important for them to have a chance to provide comment on it as much as we would in any other public engagement session, so that it's information that we can consider, not necessarily that we have to take the recommendation.
Councillor or City Manager Smith.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, and I appreciate the comments. That's why we always bring it to council first, because maybe we don't want to surprise council with something that we've already gone to have the discussion with an organization. Like, you'll certainly, Chamber is a good one. I don't think there's you'll probably hear from or may hear from multi-unit, like those people that are renting or condos and things like that. You'll certainly hear from different groups as this unfolds, but we always try to bring it to council to give them some of this flavor of what we have and what we've provided. And again, we could have gone from 3 options to actually 12. I think we started with, but it's just to give a flavor, and we'll certainly provide more information as it goes on. So I guess I appreciate the comments, but it's not necessarily we would engage, but we engage council first. Sorry, actually.
Yeah, and that process makes a lot of sense. I just wanted to make sure that was on the radar, as even just some of the responses I've received would indicate that it would not be. I think one of the reasons for me is, other than the value or that business owners having that commercial taxation and their own individual property taxation, is we're still seeing a lot of businesses struggling coming out of COVID. There are a few that I've heard that are either closing their doors or considering closing their doors. And when we look at, this is kind of one of those discussions that there's a no-win. If you say it goes on to residents, then the residents aren't happy. If you say it goes on to the businesses aren't happy. But if you look at a property assessed at $400,000, that would be an increase of $21 per month, approximately. And I think that there are some of the newer properties that have the higher assessments that are likely in a better position to absorb an increase, as none of those increases are above any of the commercial ones either. So I think it's an important discussion to have.
Other questions or comments? Okay, I have Councillor Tooley, then Seed, then Peterson.
Just sort of a couple of, Trevor's waving, I think he's waving no. I'm not exactly sure.
Yes, that's fine.
Or maybe he's just waving like a mad fool. Overall, I appreciate your Councillor Ramage's comments. And I think if we were to look at sort of having some discussion with the chamber, I think I'd like to get at least a bit of a barometer, a bit of a gauge on, one, past practice. Have we done that in the past? And is it something that's an expectation that's set up with the chamber that we would do that? But also, two, is a common practice throughout the different sectors or throughout different municipalities that they would engage feedback or that kind of thing from their chambers of commerce? I know other municipalities will have some discussion just around things like when it comes to, say, property tax appeals, and municipalities maybe setting up like a reserve fund almost to kind of fund some of those kind of things or appeal losses and that kind of thing. But I don't know if the actual tax policy itself is something that's discussed at that level, or if it's just more of a for information discussion, like here's the direction that we're going to be going, that kind of thing. Just maybe some comments or even some thought that we may want to go that direction.
I think it's there's lots of different ways that it organically happens or otherwise, whether it's put into place in a policy. Prior to this is the first reevaluation, so I'm thinking you're talking about a reevaluation year, Councillor Tooley. that we would approach, or if you were changing a tax policy significantly, you might approach the chamber on those types of things. I don't know if that's happened in the past. Some of the more experienced council members would be able to, so I guess that you were on council probably at the last revaluation, and whether they, provided a report to the chamber. But I also think it's a good idea to engage all those people that are going to be affected either positively or negatively. And, I get what, can the business absorb it, or can the higher end homes absorb it? If we're absorbing dollars, nobody can. And you'll find that out relatively quickly, that it's very, whenever you're pushing money around or trying to mitigate, or which all those three scenarios do, there's different ways of doing it, and you'll have some people happy and others not. But I guess for as far as engaging, I don't know if it's been a past practice of mine. It has been a past practice to the chamber is generally a whole, even though it doesn't encompass all businesses, there is usually a pretty good grouping of different businesses and how it might affect them. Just in the, I don't know what the second comment was, like when we're looking at changing, from I think a 0.87 to a 1, a mill rate of 1, we should maybe put a little bit more information behind that, because the intent is to have everybody equal, and it's not a matter of trying to move dollars around between one sector and the other. I think there was probably in my view, some errors made in 2016 when, they used some of the increase in assessment to lower the mill rate in commercial, where you'll see almost in every other sector, in every other municipality, it's above 1. And I think if you look at the mill rate factor for the schools even is 1.5 times the residential in commercial. We're not even close to that. And so anyway, there's a whole, I could go on forever because I really like this stuff. But there's always going to be somebody thinking they're a winner and a loser. And I think if you can just articulate to all groups that this is the reasons behind it, may not help them, but at least they'll know the reasons why. That's a long one. Sorry.
What I think in some respects too, this is a bit of a tricky scenario, because the way that things are playing out this time is that the province has actually changed the percentage of values, which they haven't actually touched for a number of years. And in addition to it, it's also a revaluation year. And so I think there's probably going to be at least a little bit of confusion out there about what's going on and why it's going on, and where things are going to land ultimately. But I can just leave it at that for now, though. Thank you.
And there will be school will play a major impact in my view, because the mill rate factor we saw, not near the decrease in residential that other sectors did, and so the mill rate actually went up like about 8% or something like that, and we saw maybe a 2% reduction in residential. So actually a net increase for people in this community, an increase in their assessment when the municipality or the province was trying to keep a level playing field. We actually saw. So do you mitigate that? Those are a lot of things that council has to take into consideration.
Councillor C.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk. For me, obviously, being a first-term councillor, this is something that there's a lot of data here, and certainly I know that there's not going to be a decision made overnight by any stretch of the imagination. One of the things that came to mind when I was first looking at it is kind of weighing that residence versus commercial, who's going to foot the bill, so to speak. And one of the things that I would really like to see, if it's possible, is just some general information, and it doesn't have to be in an official report. I'd be more than happy to have a coffee with Amanda or with Manager Smith, just regarding what other municipalities around us are doing with regards to their mill rates and how they're offsetting it on businesses versus residential. And the reason for that is that whether it be true or not, there is a perception that other communities close by are more friendly for business. And I just want to make sure that we're remaining that competitive. And, are we, again, I know that perception and reality are two grossly different things. I'm very well aware of that. But I would like to be conscious of what other communities are doing and how that's setting precedents for the years for our growth and what's going to be happening going forward. So I would certainly appreciate if there's any opportunity to see some more information like that, even if it's just for myself to better understand it. I think that it doesn't look like we're asking for much by bumping it up to 1. And certainly we have to trust the people that are giving us the advice on it. I would just like to see some of a couple more options as far as how that would affect business versus residents. I hope that's not rambling on too far. I hope it makes sense.
And I think it's fair. Anything it's sort of shared with everyone that way instead of it's just because I'm actually, and I'll make my comments a little bit before Councillor Ramage goes. Just I appreciate that we're discussing this because I used to teach this in grade 10 math about mill rate, and it is a confusing area. And then even seeing all the numbers here, it is a very confusing area, and people really the understanding of the value and how everything works. And I know City Manager Smith and I could probably spend days and days talking about it, but it's I think it's something that you need to dig in and have some understanding of. But I do appreciate Councillor Ramage's comments, and I guess what came to my mind right away is, and I'm not a round number guy. I don't need 1. I don't need I don't need everything to be that way. I don't need to round it off to the nearest penny. I just want things done the way they need to be done. And I guess if I was going to look for another option, it might be what is something in between that 0.87 and 1, like a 0.94. And so, and I say that just that it is a little bit of a compromise, that we're maybe not going all the way at one directions. And this is the first time bringing this up to anyone. So, I mean, I just want to say that for my own side, as Councillor Seed mentioned, we want to be, some of our decisions back then was to be very competitive as far as trying to attract businesses and trying to say what we had, what we offer from a tax policy. And so some of those things are in play, but I do agree that most of the things that we do by having a councillor sit at all of the chamber meetings, and we also have our economic development very involved with them. A lot of this stuff we want happening organically. This is not something to come to them in May that we're discussing and here's what we're doing. It's when I was at the breakfast, it was things that was happening. I was getting those conversations. Do you know this and this? This is what I pay in taxes. But I also hear that from the condo boards, and I hear that from the other places. So I mean, that's why we're out there and about. It is to hear what the people are saying about what they're paying. Are they getting a fair shake for what they're paying for taxes in comparison to others? And that goes back to Councillor Seed mentioning, how do we compare around the people around us? So I know, I'm throwing out some extra twists and turns here, but the question I guess too is, what is our timeline? When do we need this for the next council meeting to make a decision with this? No. Okay. What is our timeline then?
I would suggest that council has really any timeline. The only thing is we can't send out tax notices and so on until such time as it's established. So normally, in a normal year, it'd be around this time. It'd be around first part of May. This being a revaluation year is a different bit of a character that we're, bringing to the table at this time, because this is when we got the data, and we can now manipulate the data and use the data and provide these kind of numbers and all kinds of scenarios. And we can do 0.7. We can, whatever, and we will get that information. Amanda's actually already got a lot of it. Their finance people, talk about this all the time. Who's doing what? How are you doing it? Are you good? But and I want to just state, Your Worship, that an option of getting to a uniform, whether to get to the 1, was just that you hear a lot about this is unfair. This is unfair. The commercial sector, to me, rightfully so, at paying 1.52 times what a residence pays for education. Like, I think the education should be getting to 1.2 so that everybody's treated the same. But that's a big ask for, that's a huge change. We're lucky. We're 0.87 and 1. That's not a significant change. It's a change, but it's not a significant change if you're trying to get away from trying to have one sector pay more or less. So again, in commercial, they pay a little bit less here in taxes per for a mill rate factor than I would say probably any other city. They're usually around 1.4, 1.5 times, 1.3 times. You might see the odd one around that 1.2-ish, but they're all above 1. We're, I think, the only city. Is that, would you say that's a fair assessment, Amanda? So we're the only city that's under. And yes. So, as far as competitive, that even though we are and have been for lots of years, Councillor Seed had mentioned that he has heard that we're actually don't have a good business tax regime compared to other communities. So maybe that's where we're falling down a bit, is also, bragging about what we do. So anyway.
Okay, thank you. And I know the school one we don't have to justify. That's going to be our MLA in our province that has to justify. We'll hear it, but I will gladly sit down and say, here's our municipal, here's our school one. What's the change on your municipal we can talk about? Because I'm not talking about the school part, except to say that's the province that has to deal with that. And I get it. It's a very large amount, and it will be a hit for people. So I'm not minimizing it, but I realize that's not our one to even have any decision on. Councillor Ramage.
Thanks very much. I think just to kind of circle back on all this, I think it's important that engagement is done, because as has been brought up, this can be a confusing topic. And I think that's why that clarity and that information of saying, we're not asking necessarily, what do you want us to do? It is, these are the options in front of us. What is your input? Just looking at some timelines, perhaps Councillor Peterson, do you know when the next chamber meeting is?
I don't. I was going to ask that of the new executive director, except for she wasn't at the last meeting of the business that business task force. So I will get in touch with her and find out when that is for sure.
Okay, other questions or comments? Now, I think the plan will probably still be that you're bringing this on Monday, and then we make a decision at that point whether we make a decision or we table it to another time if we're not on the same. But I think any questions you need to make that decision, speak now, please. Like, I mean, it's, I realize that some things with the consultations may not happen in the same way, but I think those are things that happen throughout. Anything else? Okay.
So the last item I have is the reserve transfer. Administration recommends transferring 50% of amortization to the following department reserves. That's fire reserve, transportation reserve, recreation, and utility reserves. The transfer to the transportation and recreation reserves removes the portion of amortization related to equipment and allocates that portion appropriately to the equipment reserve. As well, the transfer to the fire reserve includes amortization plus $80,000 as contributed from the RM. Administration also recommends that the utility surplus plus be included in the transfer to utility reserve. Administration notes that the City of Warman received $1.5 million in Municipal Economic Enhancement Program, or MEEP, funding in 2020 to support the city in construction of the Lagoon Expansion Project. In 2020, the city only expensed just under $300,000 towards this project. So the remainder of this $1.5 million has been recorded as deferred grant revenue for 2020, which is basically a liability that we can recognize going forward as we incur those expenses. So at this time, of the 1.5 million for this year, we will only have the 299 available to transfer to reserves, and the remainder will come as we incur those expenses. The City of Warman also received federal Safe Restart Canada Plan funding to support efforts to protect health and safety. Administration recommends a transfer of this amount of $657,000 to what would be a new reserve, the unfunded operating expenditures reserve, to assist in potential future reductions in revenue sharing, which are currently utilized within the operating budget. Administration has allocated 1.7 million in gas tax revenue to the water treatment reserve, as the water reservoir is the project approved for this funding. Please note that this amount includes reallocation of deferred grant revenue from the prior year before this project was approved for funding. The transfer to the cemetery perpetual care reserve is a direct transfer from the sale of plots to this reserve account, and this is a non-discretionary transfer. For the last number of years, Council has approved reserve transfers in the following amounts to support strategic planning objectives: $100,000 to the Aquatic Reserve and $150,000 to the Regional RCMP Reserve. These amounts noted above have been included in the prepared recommended transfer. In preparing the 2020 financial statements, administration recognized an opportunity to allocate from the unappropriated surplus. So the unappropriated surplus is the amount of accumulated surplus remaining after deducting the investment in TCAs, investment in other non-financial assets, and the appropriated surplus balance. It is important for this balance to be available to temporarily finance operations until planned revenues are received. The City of Warman maintains a healthy unappropriated surplus balance and have identified that allocating 4.5 million to appropriated reserves will still leave an unappropriated balance of over 14 million. As such, included in the recommended reserve transfer is an additional transfer of $3 million to the Sewer Lagoon Reserve to support upcoming lift station capital expenses, and 1.5 to assist in the city yard's land acquisition and construction. Please note that both transfers to reserves and transfers from reserves are as directed by Council. As such, Council could choose to allocate differently than recommended by administration, and Council also has the discretion to allocate from reserves as they see fit. So the two options that I have provided are that Council accept administration's recommendations as presented, or option 2, that Council direct administration to reallocate discretionary reserve amounts differently than recommended.
You're muted.
Any questions or comments, Council? Councilor Ramage.
This is turning out to be one of those meetings where I talk lots and gain that bad reputation for it. I appreciate the report. I found it very difficult to follow. And I think in some email exchange, some of the capital plan forecasts have, obviously the balances have changed, but it was difficult to follow which reserve fund was happening with which, because the names on the document that I had don't match the names that are in the reserve here. So in keeping some of my comments brief, I think it would be valuable to have this charted out on a capital plan so we can actually see how the numbers flow, rather than trying to transpose them between the report and capital plan and the reserves. At least from my perspective, I would find that very helpful. The only other comment that I'll make for now is with the transfers to the aquatic facility and the RCMP facility. I think if this is truly something that is a priority to council, that we need to look at what those allocations are. Is I don't think $100,000 and $150,000 a year are going to get us where we need to be, and I think there needs to be a conversation around that. I don't. If this is the time, fantastic. If there's another opportunity to look at the capital planning and the strategy behind that, great. But overall, what I saw is that the transfers went to water, wastewater, and then not a lot changed. And certainly, I can appreciate all the work that goes into it, but I don't know how it all fits with the overall strategic priorities that we've discussed.
Comments? Okay. And again, chance to discuss, I think, the amounts for the pool and for the RCMP. I think that's probably a fall conversation when we start talking about now budget for the following year. So I think we'll have an opportunity to do that. I think it's seeing that full year cycle that right now it's the transfer of reserves. So I would say that's the time that if we're going to reallocate and sort of change the amounts, that's the time. Because that'll also be the time we probably talked about the new arena at that time too. So I think that all those things need to come into play at that time and do it, because we just went strategic planning. Now it's how are we going to pay for these things, and then are these the right amounts or not? So that's my take on that. Anything else to add, Manager Rosenthal?
No, that's all I have.
Okay. Anything else on any more questions for? Okay, City Manager Smith, yep.
Yeah, just for clarity, is there anything more that council wishes to receive before this comes back for approval? Again, this is transfers that for the year ending 2020 for our 2020 financial statement. So if there's some more information that you would like for the next report, because we'd like to get this to the next. This one has a bit of a time frame because it's just from an audit perspective. They want to get what we want to see transferred to the reserves for the end of the year and carry on with their audited financial statements. So we don't want to hold them up too long.
Okay. Councillor Tooley, yes.
So just for clarification, what we're being asked here as far as the transfers go, this would have been things that were approved for the 2020 budget. And, the discussion that happened at that time when we set the 2020 budget, and now it's just the follow through of the transfer of those funds. Would that be correct?
Correct. So the things that are different are those grant revenue amounts that we received. So the allocation of those to reserves is something that wouldn't have been in the budget because we weren't aware of those sorts of things. But aside from that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, so we'll see this on Monday then next week. Okay, thank you. We will move down to Public Works and Manager Weed.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I have nothing further to add other than the information I've submitted, other than a few, highlights and updates of my report. As I mentioned, the initial spring sweep is complete, and we've had a lot of positive comments on that. I understand some other communities haven't quite been able to achieve that, so we were able to get out there early this year, and it's basically because of the weather. So guys did a good job on that. Line painting, as you probably noted, some of the arrows, some of the crosswalks have had some new white paint, so that's always a nice time of spring. And the traffic light loops as well, they've all been repaired and they're all functioning now. So that's great to have that all operational again. And in utilities, I mentioned Cummins inspecting our gensets, and they've arrived today, and they'll be here for a few days this week inspecting all of them to ensure that they will work properly when the time is needed. It's been extremely busy, and as always, weather is one of the biggest factors in our job. This year, it's not the melt or the moisture issue with the rain keeping us busy. It's the wind and very dry conditions. We've had it's virtually no rain. We need some moisture here, would be great. Last week was Public Works Appreciation Week, and staff appreciated the donuts brought over. That was great, and the interaction with Mayor Filipchuk, that was great to see. As you've probably seen in the photo, he's proudly standing on that 2018 grader, so that was excellent. One of our long-term staff will be retiring at the end of this month. We have a little something planned on his last day to show our appreciation. That will be COVID friendly. It's pretty limited to what we can do, but we do have something planned on the 31st of May. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you. And thanks. That was a great day joining the guys and jumping up on the grader there. So any questions or comments for Manager Weed. Councillor Beck.
Thank you very much, Mayor Philipchuk. Certainly in terms of like the sewage pumping station, and whatnot, this year, with that they're being cleaned out, just out of curiosity, have we seen a decline in the flushable wipes? Because like I know in previous cleanings and whatnot, things like that, have certainly been, let's say, like a pretty large issue. So I guess I'm just curious to know if we're actually seeing, let's say, like a bit of a decrease with that.
We have not had a flushable wipe blockage or a plug for probably a couple months now. So that's a good sign. Hopefully that continues. Just that education out there that they are, even though they say flushable on those containers, they are not. They can cause a lot of damage to those pumps and cause them to overheat and destroy them. So, but it's been good the last couple months.
Right on. That's fantastic. And with this year, so like in terms of like the line painting, just kind of shifting gears a little bit on you with the line painting, is that going to be like the subcontracted out service that we're going to go with? And with this, I'm like, are we going to do any of our own, or is it all going to be subcontracted out?
No, we will be doing our own as well. We will, as I wrote in the report there, we'll be doing a third of our crosswalks. The ones we've chosen are we thought were the most worn. It'll be mostly on Central this year, Central Street, Central and 3rd, or Central and Centennial, sorry, 6th Avenue and Central. Those are the most worn. So those are the ones we'll be doing TBL durables. That's been 2 years. They've seen a lot of wear and tear. The rest we will all be going over again and touching up with our paint. So all the lines will be white again, nice and bright white. But we'll be doing with TBL about a third of our city every year.
Excellent. Thank you.
Other questions? Councillor C.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk. And Jason, a question that came up this weekend with a resident, and I apologize because I think I know the answer, but I wanted to clarify it here, is the resident I was speaking to was talking about I'm sure it's an old issue for you guys, but the lack of lighting for streetlights that's directly adjacent to the Legend Center. I guess it would be between Centennial and First Avenue, let's say, as an example, when they're walking on the south side of the road. My understanding, and I believe I had heard this in the Parks and Rec Committee, was that at one point we were waiting to put up those lights until the second ice surface is built, so that we're not interfering with any construction or anything there. Is that in fact the case? Has there been any discussion with regards to getting some appropriate lighting there? Because my understanding, and even as I've seen it early in the morning, it's very, very difficult to see that sidewalk with the commercial lights that are shining to the east and darkness really behind you.
Sorry, I have no knowledge of those streetlights. I can find out some more information for you, but I have no knowledge of when they would be coming.
Right. Okay. No, and I apologize. I didn't want to catch you off guard or anything. I just thought that you might have some information there that you could just share. But it looks like City Manager Smith has probably got an answer.
Go ahead, City Manager Smith. Yeah.
I don't have an answer, but if I do know that they're working on it, and I know Brad has been working with Fast Power on that. And it was just funny because today they're starting to put new power poles in there, and
right.
So I'm not sure if that's part of it as well. But I don't know if the planner has heard back from SAS Power yet, but I know he was working on that same issue.
Okay, well, perhaps I'll just send an email, then we can table it for later, but I just thought there might be a quick answer that I wasn't aware of. So thank you very much for that.
Other questions for, sorry?
Maybe Planner Toth can provide an update on.
Yeah, we'll let him when he gives his report. If there's anything to add, he can mention it then. Anything else for Manager Wheat? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Let's move down to Planning Manager Toth.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk, members of council. Yes, just in regards to those lights, we do have a couple of requests in with SAS Power right now. We're looking for some quotes. The ones I believe Councillor Seed's referring to just north of the Legend Center, they're kind of coming up to the intersection at Clubhouse Boulevard. There is a bit of discussion ongoing. When we do go to put the second ice rink in, there's actually a gas line through there that probably is going to have to be lowered. just to accommodate some of the extra parking. And we're not sure kind of what effect that will have on some of the existing infrastructure, just kind of behind sidewalk and kind of the existing parking lot. So we were kind of holding off on that, but we do have the requests in for quotes. So once we get those back, we'll have another kind of discussion internally to see if there'll be an effect kind of on future construction and anything going on around there, and then kind of take it from there. But we've got, I think, 3 requests in for different quotes around the city where we've had some concerns raised by residents that it's a little dark. Just in terms of my report for today, majority of it is for information or kind of updates for council, not a lot of decision items. I've obviously provided, as usual, the kind of updated permit numbers to date. So far, again, kind of definitely above and beyond kind of where we were last year, both in numbers and value. Value significantly up again because of some of the larger commercial projects we've had, but right across the board, including kind of our residential permit and value numbers are significantly up from last year. So that's a good sign, and we'll hope that will continue on for the remainder of the year. In terms of real estate numbers, we were provided updated real estate numbers again this month. Again, across the board, kind of all indicators are positive or are up, from kind of number of listings being down to, the average sales price and number of sales being up. So very good data being sent to us for any of the resale market. Things are still looking fairly strong. Just driving around Warman or looking on MLS, you'll see the number of listings being significantly down. I know I check MLS quite often, and the number over top of Warman seems to be getting lower and lower. The one item I did kind of just want to bring to council's attention that we will be bringing to the meeting on Monday just for a decision item is the subdivision of 700 Centennial. This is the subdivision for the Shoppers Drug Mart that's currently being constructed. It's just been done a little differently. Typically, we would do the subdivision first, but due to the timelines that the developer had with the contractor, and because the site's kind of all owned by the same person, there wasn't the same urgency, I guess, to get the subdivision done and title transferred and everything that we would typically do with one of these sites with multiple owners. So that'll be coming to council on Monday for just a resolution. There's no rezoning required with that, and no surfacing agreement as well required with that. I've also just provided my monthly bylaw enforcement and yard review update for council. Bylaw's been fairly busy kind of across the board over the last month. We've been getting a lot of concerns as of late just regarding motorized, whether it be gasoline powered dirt bikes or quads within the city. So we've tried to focus some of our attention on those areas of the city where we've been getting those complaints, although it is difficult for us to track. As I think most of you are aware, bylaw can't do moving violations, so they can't necessarily go after someone and try and stop them. But where we can, we are either meeting up with people who are already stopped, or, in the right circumstances, kind of having discussions with them and educating them on the bylaws in the city and kind of the rules around all of that. And we'll continue to do that throughout the summer. Other than that, not a lot, I guess, to report on the bylaw side. Trailers, especially RV, especially with the long weekend coming up, that's becoming another kind of, I wouldn't say issue, but something that we're definitely looking at and getting phone calls about. We're also doing some communication with our community communication liaison, Erin. So we'll be putting out kind of weekly updates referring to different bylaws and the regulations around those bylaws. This week we'll be focusing on the RV just because of the long weekend coming up, and it seems prudent to do so. But as we go every week, we'll be kind of focusing on a new area of bylaw enforcement and the bylaws and regulations around that. So that basically kind of concludes my report in terms of the updates. But if there's any questions, it's definitely open.
Hey, questions? Councillor Beck.
Sorry, we just took a moment there to get the mute off. So Brad, with the proposed subdivision there, so on that Plan A, or pardon me, like on the Appendix A map, with this here, so the area that's south of the north, let's say proposed access, is that all going to be paved? Or would like another building, let's say be set to, to be built there and, let's say like permanently like in the future?
So both, where both of the right-in, right-outs access the site off of Centennial, that will be directly into the proposed parking area for the Shoppers Drug Mart. So that whole area will be paved. The site south of it, we are working with the developer to ensure that there'll be access through kind of the site. It'll be a shared access and probably some sort of additional right-in, right-out will be utilized once they go to develop that third site. But the two that are shown on the proposed plan of subdivision will be accessing directly into the Shoppers Drug Mart parking lot.
Okay. So that most south, let's say proposed access and that kind of thing, like would that be, let's say, like would that impact parcel B at let's say like any later point or whatnot, or like, are you fine with where the proposed accesses are?
Yes, there's potential that it will, just in terms of there will be access between the three sites internally within the parking area. So even though you may access kind of going into the Shoppers Drug Mart site, you will be able to go to kind of the central lane, so to speak, and then access the site that will be kind of the further south site. I guess you could call it B. But there will be another access point for whatever's developed on B once we have a better idea of kind of what the traffic counts will be and what kind of generation whatever will be developed there will give us.
Okay. Yeah, because certainly with this here, I mean, I'm like it's not reflected very well on this particular map, but obviously the let's say the exit on the opposite side of the road there, for the Legend Center is certainly there. So I guess I was just trying to conceptualize, let's say how traffic patterns could certainly look into the future if there's going to be, let's say, two proposed accesses, to that parcel B, and that kind of thing, and how that might work, just in terms of, let's say, like pedestrian traffic and also traffic coming in and out of to like the Legend Center there. So yeah, I guess I was just trying to understand the full conceptual view as to how traffic patterns around there are certainly going to develop.
Yeah, and both of those sites that are showing both of those access points that are accessing onto Centennial Boulevard there, those are just right-in, right-outs. They're not all directional, so you won't be able to come out there and and head southbound on Centennial. If you're wanting to go southbound on Centennial, you'll have to go through that shared access point at the hotel, which is kind of directly across the street from the Co-op access, and then head to the light and go southbound on Centennial. And it's hard to comment on parcel B quite yet, just without knowing kind of what will be constructed there, the number of vehicles that may be generated or trips generated from whatever's developed there. It's difficult to say, but right now the plan is that there will be a central access that kind of goes through the site that accesses Clubhouse Boulevard, and then obviously some sort of right-in, right-out access onto Centennial Boulevard from that parcel B.
Mm-hmm. So with this here, is there going to be any barrier between the hotel and let's say like the Shoppers site at this particular time, or with this year, like is it going to be free and legal for is a hotel going to mind about, let's say, like increased traffic, coming from that particular site?
No, they're working on a shared access agreement between the hotel and Shoppers Drug Mart. And we've done some calculations just in terms of trip generation on like an hourly basis. And there's no concerns about that being either overloading the access onto Clubhouse Boulevard or being too much demand for the traffic signal at Centennial Boulevard. Once that site is developed, again, we'll probably take a closer look at it. May eventually require some tweaking in terms of the timing at the traffic signals, just to allow more time for people turning off of Clubhouse Boulevard onto Centennial. But in terms of the Shoppers Drug Mart and the amount of traffic that will generate, as well as the hotel for the time being, there's no concerns from the administration side.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for your answers.
No problem.
Other questions or comments? Councillor Seed.
Just one quick one, and I know we had talked about it before, but we had asked, or I had asked, if it was possible for when these new buildings are going up, specifically the Shoppers, to have some kind of signage outlining what's happening. And again, I know we all know, but it seems like every single day we see on social media, hey, what's happening here, what's happening there. And I think that it could benefit the businesses by them being noticed a little bit more, and also get rid of a lot of the speculation and the misconception that people seem to have. So I know it's very small in the scale of a building going up, but it sure would be nice to see some basic signage of, the whole future home of kind of thing. At least from my standpoint, I don't know what the rest of the council feels. But.
Yeah, I remember we talked about that. That was a few months back, and I know in a couple of the conversations I've had with the owner of that property, we mentioned just in terms of, letting the public know and that kind of thing. I might work with Brendan now that Brendan started with the city too, just to see if, there's any communication lines he can open up with that kind of end of things, and see if there's a willingness to put up a sign, not only at this site, I guess, but future developments too.
Other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Manager Toth.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move down to recreation. Manager Goneril. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Mayor Philpchuk, members of council. You have my report in front of you, and it doesn't have a lot of action items coming out of it. It's a lot of informational based on what's happening, projects that we've got going on. Just to touch base with a few of them are Green Wave Monitoring Project is completed. They completed the install on the 14th, and they are now actively collecting data on our operations, which is going to help us in the future for our operations and how to decrease and be more fiscally responsible as we go forward. So that's going to be on a quarterly schedule, as we'll go over things and see what needs to be done, and if there's any adjustments to our schedules to help with that. Nothing but good things. The install went fantastic, so we're looking forward to move forward and seeing those reports come from them. Albright Electric has been in. They finished the install on the arena portion of the arena with the LED lights, not the leisure ice, and they started today on the green gymnasium. So that project is moving along just great as we move forward with it. So we're looking a huge difference in the lighting. It was unbelievable. We thought we had really good lighting with the high bays, nice bright arena, but just the switch over to the LEDs is incredible. The transformation, we went from something like 2.4 lumens up to 5.8 with just the regular over the ice. So it more than doubled, almost tripled the brightness in there. So it's you'll notice a huge difference come the fall or even in the summertime here when you come in. So it's fantastic. The audiovisual project at the Brian King Center, we're just waiting for a few more pieces of equipment to arrive, and we'll get that project underway. It should be an easy enough install. We've just got a few bookings for weddings here and there. Nothing has canceled yet. Everybody's just kind of hanging on to their dates. So that install should go on pretty good. So the rest of the report, there's lots about what we've been going on in the parks and in the ball diamonds, getting ready to go. Our streetscape programs, that's the planting of flowers and trees, and we do take some donation of trees over the from residents. If we can spade them out and we can use them in our parks, we gladly will do that for people. I updated a little bit of stuff that always seems to come rolling into councillors' laps here as we get going with our pest control programs, whether it be the product we use for mosquito control, and that's Vectobac. I provided a link there to give you a little bit of feedback so you can read up and see the product we're using and the benefits it has for our community. And we also have in there that what the product we use for our herbicide to do weed control, so dandelions. We're a little dry right now, so we wanted to make sure that we had all of our irrigation on before we start putting that down. We can burn turf if it's too dry, so we haven't done anything yet, and dandelions are starting to pop up here and there in the really dry spots. So and then the last one, we made a new addition to the website under our pest and disease control, and we added black knot. Our arborist is seeing lots of it in boulevards of people's homes and whatnot, and in the backyards when he drives up and down the alleys. With black knot, it is a fungus. It's controllable if you get at it right away, but if you don't, it can take over your tree and basically kill your tree. So those are some of the key points of the report. Community garden plots. It's interesting to see how popular it is. I am taking a proposal to the Rec Advisory Committee, but we had 75 applications for 56 available garden plots. So we're turning away about 20 people that would really like a garden plot in town. So we'll see if we can solve those issues coming out of the Rec Advisory Committee. And then the last thing that I really wanted to touch base on was the funding applications. I've got 3 other ones that I'm working on right now that haven't made it to this list. The last item there is the Canada Healthy Communities. We applied for the outdoor rink and we got denied for it. We will be able to apply, and we're doing an application right away for it. So you see it back in there. Some park pathway and some lightings. You'll have read in the Gazette where a lot of our neighboring communities receive funding. This is the grant that they received funding for. So we'll send a second application out fairly quickly for that. The application process was fairly simple. So we'll do a quick turnaround on that and get that back out and see if we can get take advantage of some of that some of that money that's out there. I did have one item that did not make it into my report. I had the Diamond Rodeo president, Grant Brunin, give me a call on Friday morning, asking if the city felt it was okay for him to do a parade. Usually with the rodeo, part of the Saturday morning events is a parade. I told him I would have that discussion with council and I would take it, even though it wasn't in my report, and see what council felt on that. They would have to follow the health regulations, which is under the definition is on page 167 of the guidelines. It's considered a rolling car parade. So very similar to that of what we're doing for grad. And they would have to follow all of those regulations within that. So there's no candy tossing, self-distancing and staging and all of that fun stuff. So we'll let you guys have that discussion and we'll go from there. But and the last thing is June is Parks Month, very similar to the Public Works Recognition Day. So we invite Mayor Philipchuk on out to bring some steaks instead of donuts, and you can actually drive the Zamboni if you want, Gary.
I would like that. That's one of my dreams to get on that thing.
So if there's any questions, yeah, floor is open, I guess.
Okay, Councillor Peterson.
So I heard you mentioning that you're taking trees from residents if they're looking to get rid of trees and you can get them out.
Yes.
I know one of my friends on Facebook just lives over on 4th Street, Crystal Shaw. I'm just wondering if you have you heard anything there?
Nope, we've only had one resident contact us. We'll take any tree that is disease free and that will be transferable within the spade that we have. Anything bigger than the spade we have, we find transplanting is unsuccessful. The root ball is just not big enough. So we will do it if we can get in access at it. The homeowner has to do the call first. They have to get line locates done, which is a free process. And we will remove your tree and we will replace the topsoil, that the plug basically that comes out of it. And we'll put your tree within the park system somewhere. So,
Okay. Yeah, the trees I know she's looking to get rid of are all outside of her fence, so be easy to get at. I'll tell her to get in touch with you and
yeah, if she wants, yeah, contact myself or Calvin, and we'll come have a look and see if we can do it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments? Councillor Seed.
Just a real quick general comment. I just wanted to pass on, Paul, if you could mention it to your staff as well. Again, my kids spend a lot of time going through different parks and walks and such like that. Just the other day, I was up doing a very early morning walk, and I was just really, really impressed with how good the parks look, like especially around the ponds and stuff. Like the grass is good. There's very few dry patches, and that's remarkable considering the fact that we haven't seen a drop of rain in months. I just think that the crew's doing a great job on them as per usual. But I think it would certainly deserve a little bit of recognition that they're in, I think, almost as good a shape as I've ever seen them in, to be honest.
Yeah, once we get some water, they'll really perk up real nice. So we haven't fertilized yet. We haven't done any weed control yet. We haven't aerated yet. So we've done some dethatching and some sweeping of parks and whatnot, but very minimal. We're dethatching and we're mowing right now. But like I said, irrigation just nicely came on. I think Friday they turned on the last of the irrigation. So hopefully we'll see some rain here in the future, and they'll perk up, and we'll get out and put some fertilizer on and spray for weeds. So,
well, they still look great without it. So.
Thank you. I'll pass that on.
They do look great, and hopefully the snow on Thursday helps out. I do want to mention the before and after you have with the cemetery too. That incredible, looks great and very inviting, and that's nice because many people visit, and to see that transformation is excellent. So, well done with those types of things. Anything else, Councillor Beck?
Hey, Paul. Just in so like in regards to Neil Wagner Park there, you certainly outlined the fact that that the alkalinity there, certainly creates a a problem there for the paving stones. So obviously temporary fixes are certainly going to be done with this here. Let me just ask, like, would it make sense for it to actually stay as, crusher dust there rather than, trying to go with any other upgrades? Or is there any kind of treatment, that can be done to prevent something like that there happening in the future, or certainly, like other areas within our community?
We are currently right now trying to address the areas in there where we can't get grass to grow. There's certain areas that have a higher content of alkalinity within it, and so we're taking the advice of the golf course and some of our chemical salesmen. They've been great to work with. They've taken their time and come and looked at our parks, and they've done some testing and stuff. So we are going to chemically treat it, and I think we did it on Friday when we turned on the irrigation in there, some of those spots. So we're going to see how that goes and how grass grows, because we've got other areas in town. Percy Hoff soccer pitch is one of them. Neil Wagner Park in the chute, there's an area in there that is one of them too. So we'll see how this product works, and if we carry it through, and what the cost is going to be to the department, weigh the pros and cons kind of thing. So we'll see how that alkalinity works out. As far as changing out, we've pulled all the paving stone already, and we've transferred in, and we've done all of the crusher dust in there. We weren't really happy with the crusher dust that we got, which is fantastic that we did that project first, because we're going to start the repairs in Crystal Lake. So we've ordered different crusher dust from a different company. But you know what, we're really going to have a look and see, and we'll play it by ear and see what we get for complaints from residents and users of that park. If there's a big outcry that they want it back to a hard surface, then we'll really entertain, going back in and paving it. It seems the oil base products within the asphalt isn't affected by the alkalinity levels. I think that's the next way to go with this. Putting back in concrete or paving stones, we're just going to end up in the same boat 5 years down the road. So we'll really watch and see what the users of that park have to say.
Excellent. Right on.
Yep.
For me, let's say like my last point is going to be a comment, and that's let's say like on the disc golf course. So obviously with this year, certainly recreation department there certainly made quite a few changes, to the disc golf course. Sounded like one of those there didn't work out, let's say, quite as planned. And certainly with this year, listening and responding, let's say, to the residents and making changes, let's say like a second time, certainly just shows, certainly how well that that our organization does, certainly take feedback from the public and certainly retool our operations there. So I just wanted to recognize that fact that you're doing a fantastic job on that, and certainly looking after the parks and also our residents there as as a whole. So thank you very much.
As far as disc golf goes, we really didn't. We wanted to treat it just like as if it was my backyard, right? I wouldn't be appreciative if I was being disturbed all the time and my kids' activities were being disturbed with flying discs. And so we put the course in with the intentions of providing our residents with another outdoor activity for drop-in purposes. We didn't do it to create hardship for any of the residents along there. So we tried to act as fast as we can to make those changes and tried to solve them. And we follow up with them after a couple of weeks. And unfortunately, we had a couple residents that the discs were still finding their way into their yards. And so we met with we have a staff member on our staff in the parks that plays it every day. So he came back with a great idea, and we ran with it, and hopefully the resident has been happy. She thanked us for making the changes, and she's commented after a couple of weeks that the discs aren't appearing in her yard. So she's very appreciative of the actions we took. So and that's what we want. We want people in our parks, but we also want those people that built homes on them to be able to sit back and enjoy. So thank you very much for your comments.
Any other questions or comments? Great, thank you. We will move to our break then. Let's take a 10-minute break. I think we've been going more than an hour. So 2:51, we'll go 2:51. It just went 50, so 9 minutes. Okay, I'll call the meeting back to order here. I guess we're almost 2, 4, 5. I'll just wait for Councillor Tully. I'm a minute early. Okay, we will get started then. I'll call the meeting back to order and we'll move down to protection. And we'll start with our fire chief, Austin.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. You have my report in front of you. April was a very crazy month for us. So with 30 days in the month, we were nearly 2 calls per day. About half of the medical calls that we did were COVID related. We did have a very large bubble that we worked through in our community here. And on the fire side, anything that we have ever trained for a fire occurred in the month, whether it's a car fire, barbecue fire, power pole, structures, garages, houses. We had one of everything in the past month. So like I said in my report, you know, very, very proud of our volunteers and our firefighters and first responders here. That's as taxing a month as we could possibly ever have had, and we made it through unscathed, and things seem to be settling down here now. So also in my report, I did cover off that we were approved to do rapid testing for our members. So we've got a few more people that need to get their training done by Wednesday. And then our hope by this time next week, we'll be able to start doing in-house testing for antigens for COVID. So statistics wise, I'm not sure if you have any questions there, but I've broke everything down and attached them for you, and I'll take any questions now before I move to my next thing.
Okay, for questions for Chief Austin. Councillor Seed.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk. Chief Austin, just looking at the stats, I mean, obviously they're a little bit overwhelming just reading them, let alone seeing that your crew's been able to attend to them all. There seems to be a rising trend in medical calls. Are these, in your opinion, directly related as a result of COVID, or is this just a spike that you don't see a trend happening, or is there anything that we can be doing as a community to try to mitigate this ever increasing amount of medical calls?
Well, I think the COVID piece of our business here in the past month, I think that did create a bubble or you know, a high call volume for a month. It seems to be back. Our average right now is about 1.25 medical calls per day, and we're pretty close to that, back on track right now. It was just we started getting some days there when the COVID bubble was on where we'd attend, you know, anywhere from 3 to 5 calls in a 24-hour period, and that's the you know, logistically that was a very tough thing to do. A little too early to tell whether it's a trend. I do know that it does look like we're going to be up just on a month-to-month basis about 25%. It looks like where we're going to be, but so far so good. In the month of May, we're back to somewhere around that 1.4 calls per day. So a little too early to call it a trend, but as Mayor and Council know, we are working on some things behind the scenes to try to address these concerns.
Perfect. And I do have one more part to a question, if I may.
Yes.
Chief Austin, one of the things that I have noted in some of the research that I've been doing with regards to both the the medical calls that Warman Fire is doing, as well as the in conjunction with Medivy Ambulance, is that I understand that there used to be a report that was available, and I apologize, I don't recall the specific name of it, that highlighted for Medivy or MD Ambulance at the time what their response time to calls was and how that affected our overall service within the city. Is that something that you still have access to, or something that we can request to better assist us for getting a bigger grasp on what our medical strains are, where they're being allocated, and how we can work with Medivy to decrease some of those response times?
Yep, actually, that is a report that we used to get up until about a year and a half ago. It's called a unit clear report, and because medical dispatching is all done off of CAD, computer aided dispatching, they go through a series of cards, and as you ask questions, as you click it on the screen, everything gets documented. So from the time the 911 call is placed to the time that they determine what the chief complaint is, time the ambulance is dispatched, first responders are dispatched, on scene, at patient, clear, all those things are documented on that. And that's something that we used to get after every call, and we use that to base our notes when we go back and fill in our times for our payroll and different things like that. That is a report that was taken away from our first responder group, and it is something that we've asked to get back. And without getting into too many details, His Worship and City Manager Smith, we do have a list of asks in the short term that we've gone to SHA with, things that we'd like to see, and that's one of the things we'd like to see back, because it is right now we have no way of knowing what the actual to the second ambulance response time is from the city to here. We can only do a best estimate based on the time that we get dispatched to the time that the ambulance shows up after that. So the only true indicator of how well we're doing as EMS, whether it's Medivy and ourselves, is to get that report. So that is something that we're looking to get back in our hands, that's for sure.
Okay, and sorry, just to make sure I understood, there was a little bit of a glitch there while I was hearing your answer, but this is something then that Mayor Filipchuk and or administration is aware of and is requested already then, or is this something that we can assist with to ask for again?
Yeah, it is in an ask that His Worship and City Manager Smith are aware of, and we've put a letter together to send it into SHA. It's part of our ask list. So
perfect. Thanks for the clarification on that.
Yeah, for sure. Any other questions?
Other questions or comments? Councillor Beck.
Yep. So just regarding the rapid antigen testing, that we're looking at taking on. Obviously, like, this is a fairly quick test to do and whatever, but like there again, I guess it'd be pretty tough to judge what the demand might be. So I guess in terms of resources on that, with this year, like, do we have any estimation as to what kind of demands that's going to put on your particular department, and whether or not there's any let's say like future resources that might actually be needed for stepping up to the plate on this one?
For sure. So when we apply to be able to do rapid antigen testing, we have to say what we're going to use the tests for, and then they approve your application based on certain criteria. So our application is not to do public testing at all, and it's not open to say all city employees or anything like that. The reason that we got approved primarily was to keep our responders responding, so that if we have a close contact or somebody's kiddo brings home a letter from school that says, "Hi, Mom and Dad, I have to stay home for 2 weeks," or whatever that might be, that we can, or their kid has had a close contact, we can actually do a rapid test, and in 15 minutes, we can tell whether or not your body is sloughing COVID, which is an indicator of being infected. And of course, if you get a positive, then they have to go to SHA and get an actual full brain swab test there. So we, within our parameters, it's not going to tax our department at all. It's one of those things that we'll do as needed. And I've also extended it out to City Manager Smith, just in the off chance of somebody from the city, because I know the city has applied to be able to do antigen testing for its key employees as well. That's a separate process. That's a separate thing that they're doing. But if there is a one-off here and there, it's something that we could possibly help them with. So yeah, if it was open up to public, I think it would be a lot more demanding. I think you're right.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Great. So it's more of a convenience in a lot of ways to be able to know for your responses. Thank you. Councillor Steed.
Just in a little bit of a follow-up there to Councillor Beck's question. Chief Austin, is this something that would be considered to be made available to the RCMP based in Warman as well? Or is that something that you think might be too taxing, or do they have their own testing as well?
It's my understanding they have their own policy and their own testing parameters, but police, fire, and EMS were part of the initial rollout for the testing thing. So knowing the RCMP, they've probably got something either in place or in the works. So
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, so the big important weighty matter of state that I have to cover off now, Mayor Philipchuk's challenge of Mayor Minch of the city of Martinsville for all the enchiladas for which community could put through more people in a clinic. So we figured it out. So Martinsville in their clinic, they did an 8-hour clinic on the Thursday, and they were able to put 302 people through in 8 hours, which was fantastic. We were able to do a 12-hour clinic, and it just so happened that our community really went to bat for you. I think the fact that a Imperial cruiser showed up and a stormtrooper popped out to encourage people not to miss their shot, I think that helped. We were able to do an all-time record for the Warman drive-through clinic of 546 people in 12 hours. So basically, if we rounded Martinsville up to a 12-hour clinic, they would be at about 453. So we beat them by about 25%. So the Martinsville clinic was able to get 37 3/4 people through per hour, and we were able to get through 45 and a half. So congratulations, your worship. You will not have to don a Martinsville Marauder jersey, and hopefully you have a nice one picked out from Mayor Minch, and that's a great victory. So that's fantastic.
That is great news, and I appreciate that. And you know what? Just the community spirit too, because seeing some of the things that were going on in the area, just to try to attract people and really keep that line going. Like it was 25, I think, and above of that day, as far as the age group, and it was constantly there. And we were a little afraid that the 20s would be a little bit more of a challenge to get the uptake. So appreciate that. Appreciate all that you did to set this up and get it going, and it'll be nice to send a jersey over to my colleague in Martinsville and let him wear it to a council meeting one night for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And for all the council who, if you're watching on Twitter and Facebook, the response that we've had, I'll just echo what Mayor Philipchuk said. Our community buy-in for getting vaccinated and getting back on with life is incredible. Like the people of Warman are rock stars when it comes to this. So much so, and Martinsville as well. But I know as far as Warman goes, if you look on social media, the amount of doctors that are weighing in from SHA saying, thank you, Warman. Look at Warman's community spirit. People commenting, another reason why I love living in Warman. Like it's really bringing the community together. And we're over 1,900 immunizations just for our residents here so far, just with our drive-through clinic. There will be another drive-through this Saturday, and we'll be over 2,500 after that clinic is done. So just, hats off to the people of Warman for sure. It's an honor to serve them for sure.
Great. Thank you for the efforts. And you talked about how busy the month was. That's another area too. And just talking to some of the people that go through it, it's a class act going in and through and around. So, and that is the support of your team, definitely being a part of that. And the meet and greet after you get your shot, it's a positive experience for everyone. So we appreciate that and appreciate all the efforts of all your team to make this happen.
I'll pass that on for sure.
Thanks. Okay, thank you very much. We will move down to the RCMP report. I'm not sure if Barry's on. Staff Sergeant Thomas. City Manager Smith, do you know if Staff Sergeant is coming or not?
I haven't heard, your worship.
Okay.
He hasn't mentioned anything.
I guess any questions that our manager can take to him? Any questions from the report? And if he does come on, we'll definitely give him a chance to speak to it. Yes, Councillor Seed.
The only point of note that I would just like to see if we can get some feedback from Staff Sergeant Thomas would be, I noticed that there's an alarmingly high amount of false alarm attendance. Specifically, this month was 11. And I've noticed a trend that there seems to be more and more happening all of the time. And I'm just wondering if there's anything that we can do, even from a standpoint of contacting businesses, to remind them of the tax on our services, to have these calls that are repeatedly being done, because my understanding is that those will tie up an officer anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, just responding, checking it out, and then getting cleared again. And obviously, when we're running into situations where we have sometimes only 2 to 4 officers active within the city, taking them out 11 times for false alarms is obviously a bit of a concern.
Okay, so you can take that forward. Councillor Beck.
Yeah, this year, certainly following the report there, the next page there certainly shows files of interest. Actually, both of those are very curious, points in terms of how serious the assault on a police officer may have actually been. It'd be nice to at least have some type of report on that there, because obviously with this year, that's certainly concerning. When this is certainly like a service out there, these are not really the people that should have to suffer through assaults. And also with this year, the reports of extortion and threats. It would be nice to know a little bit more around that, just to see if there's anything that the city could do in terms of Facebook posts or whatnot, that might be able to, at least draw awareness out there. So where this year, our community would know that, that kind of activity is going on, or let's say signs of what to look for. So I would like to have a little bit more, detail on both of those. Because certainly with this year, the very first, let's say stat that's shown is the assaults. Certainly reported 7, 4 people have been charged, but that's just certainly one of those concerning stats that I would like to have a little bit more info on.
Okay, thank you. And I do appreciate that he's putting these files of interest. That's new, and that was something I know Councillor Seed tried to expand it a little bit. So this is more, the stats don't tell you this. This is more their reality. So and it's something each month, a little bit of what's happening. Anything else to take forward? Okay, we will move on then. We'll move on to economic development. And Brendan Gasmo.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I wanted to just kind of go over just kind of the information I had provided. Again, it's kind of just an information basis that I wanted to touch on, and then we can, any questions you guys have, feel free to ask them. So I just wanted to introduce, Aaron will speak a little bit more on this, but we are going to start celebrating, obviously, our business community and our city, more than we ever have, I guess, with me being in the role. Now, as far as on Sunday, we're going to start just doing a weekly post of businesses. This week is Women's Entrepreneurs Week. So I think it's obviously important to, highlight a few of those, but also celebrate just our businesses, and that post will go out weekly. Aaron can kind of go into that a little bit more, but we will start working in a more closer proximity as far as it's things like that go. Just wanted to kind of go over the, as well as Chief Austin had kind of go over the rapid testing for them, but that's been a heavy question across my desk lately, is just, where to get the application form and where's the information for businesses, because I know that more and more businesses are starting to prepare for that. May 30th timeline is awesome, but as cases have kind of sputtered up and down the last few weeks, it's still cause for concern for some businesses. So I know that I will make sure that that's posted to the website, and I can provide the link after, as well as at City Hall. And I will try and make sure there's copies at the Legends as well, just for and as well, if there's any counselors that would like some prepared and ready, just for if you're getting any questions, I would be glad to have just any extra forms for you to give to businesses as well. The retail market analysis has officially closed. We had received 3 proposals, one from Colliers, Insightrix, and Morris Interactive. I'm going to be going over them with City Manager Smith, and then depending on how council wants to go over that, can be brought to a future council meeting. Just got them in-house here, so I'm going to review them and see just what might go best. City Manager Smith and I still haven't sat down, but hoping to this week. I'm looking forward to, I guess, just the final strategic plan for the city of Warman. I'm hoping in the next little bit to finish up and work on the economic development work plan for the next few years, and I want to start getting those goals to start working in the direction to start tracking our, I guess the efficiency in the development and the growth of the city. And the last thing before just open it up to questions for council, this didn't make it into the report, but on Friday, the mayor and I were just kind of going back and forth. But we are going to I know we're a city, but we're going to do our first town hall with myself, the mayor, and City Manager Smith on June 17th at 6:30. Basically, I want to invite businesses out to, have a presentation done up, but as well as to any questions or concerns, just celebrating some stories. And that pertains to every business, not just our chamber businesses. Want to do that because in times like these, I know that some of our business owners are willing to see me and have a coffee. And then there's others that you still need to adhere to just how their comfort level is with seeing me stop by or having the mayor stop by. So just thought it was a good way to finally introduce myself, like put a face to a name for them. But that's something we'll be doing, and I'll send out a reminder and an invite as well. But just something that I'd like to do for my department to be there for those businesses that, there's been a lot of supports federally and provincially, and from a city, with the business tax incentive, from a few years back. But I want to be able to walk hand in hand with a lot of these businesses. And there's no maybe simple solution for a lot of it, but letting people know that the city is there to be there with them. And I think for mayor and council, you've all been very hands-on, and that's appreciated, I know, from a lot of businesses. So I'll pass that along, that they're very lucky to have a council, but also just a city that truly cares, from public works to parks to here at City Hall. So those are just some compliments I've been getting from our business owners, and just wanted to pass those along. So I'll now open it up just for questions.
Any questions, council, for Economic Development Officer? Councillor Seed.
Thank you, Mayor Philipchuk. I'm just wondering, and this would be a general question for Brennan, and I understand that new to the role that you may not have this answer, and perhaps other councillors may be able to weigh in on it, especially ones that are not in their first term. Is there in the past, or has there ever been any consideration of providing council with a short list of businesses that are, again, inquiring for applications coming into the city, or kind of the areas that they're looking at? Obviously stuff that's guarded, because we don't want to be putting it out there and saying, hey, company XYZ is thinking about moving in here. That's definitely proprietary. But I would certainly, at least from my standpoint, would be very interested to see what businesses are contacting our city. And more specifically, from a sales standpoint, is when we get to a point where a business is selected not to come into Warman, I would really like to see some follow-up information as to what ultimately led to their decision to either not open in its entirety, or B, select another venue outside of our community to open. Kind of a long-winded question, but is that something that you've considered or would consider in the future?
For myself personally, that's something I want to. City Manager Smith has made it pretty clear to just be kind of holding the hand through the whole process for the city, whether they need something from finance or planning, just kind of being that the handholder through the whole process, making it easy for them. So basically, at the same point, want to be able to provide information to council, and if that's something council would like to see, then of course I'd like to provide that information as well, and can definitely take that into consideration for future reports for sure.
And just to give a little bit of background, that was actually done. We would go, there's a reason that economic development's near the end of the meeting. We usually would go into in camera and have some of those discussions too. So some of those things that you have and some of the questions you might have that obviously cannot be divulged publicly at this point, we would go in camera and then have that discussion. So yes, we can do that as I think Brendan knows that if there's anything like that, he can ask that there's an in-camera part of his report moving forward. Mm-hmm. Other questions or comments? A couple that I have. First of all, the branding one at the top and the current campaign. It brings a lot of beaming pride when I hear our statement on CKOM all the time about it's brought to you by the city of Warman, because the personalities also do it too. So when it's on the Brent Lauk show, he does it at 8:20 in the morning. There you have it right from him. On the weekend, sometimes it's a recording, but it's every day where we get a time spot that we are mentioned in these positive lights and I think it really has a bearing. And so I think those things have made a difference, even from the business standpoint. Like, why do you want to set up in Warman? It's because it is this type of community. It is, and so these are the types of business. So I see those benefits that make the message. I'm fine if it changes and we look at other things, but I don't think you want to give up too much of the things that seem to have been working. Now I want to mention that. The retail market analysis, I'm looking forward to that too, because we and that even came out a little bit from our strategic plan, that we have the south area, we have Central Street, and we have down Centennial, and what businesses really fit in each one of those is something we all want to know. And so I look forward to how yours and Manager Smith's review of that goes, and then see your recommendations moving forward with that. And just so everybody knows, I got a text, I think it was from Brandon on Friday about looking at this, and of course I'm going to say yes to that. I think anytime we can get out to the public that way. Right now, it's only been by request. I'm trying to follow the spirit of the COVID rules completely, and so if somebody requests me to come and visit, I will go in mask and have a visit. But I haven't been going and reaching out to people in a way that I probably want to and will do once the restrictions aren't there. Any businesses that I utilize, though, you may have noticed, I try and also take some pictures and give them the advertising from my service that way. That's more in the spirit of COVID in that way, that I'm not going beyond really my scope. So I think that's been the goal, and I invite all of you, if you go to places, take a picture and and brag about some of the businesses here in Warman. I think that those things only help, and Brendan will start joining on to those too, and sort of reposting, and so it works together that way. I just want to point that the online form will be great. We'll see what the uptake is with people joining. Hopefully it'll be the first one. We'll have more people, with it being a novelty for sure. And then we'll see how it goes out, and then make decisions. Because right now we should actually be having our open house, which creates a lot of opportunity for people to have those interactions. And that goes back to almost with Councilor Ramage when we were talking about tax policy and all those things too. That's where sometimes we're hearing from all the groups, all the interest groups throughout the whole city at one time. So that's my comments on some of those things.
Sure, I like it.
Councilor Ramage.
Thanks very much. Just with Wembexa coming up on the 27th, it's a really good opportunity to celebrate the businesses in the city here. And I understand that the chamber is taking a slightly different approach to it this year around. We're trying to celebrate or highlight more businesses rather than awards. Have we heard much from the chamber or on that, or how are things going?
Things are going well. We've had a lot of submissions, and it's definitely going to look different as far as just, I mean, how they're celebrating. But I did stop in to see Debbie a couple weeks ago and as well as last week, and I think that Jamie Holowati is definitely taken more of a approach on that one this time around, because I know that just for you counselors to know, Debbie is still teaching a class during the day as well, so she's kind of giving assignments to her class, so she's at the chamber, but that's kind of why she's been kind of, I guess, hit and miss sometimes during the day. So I think she's kind of hands off. So I've reached out to Jamie just to see if they need any help or how we can, what's going forward. Because I haven't heard a lot on Wembexa since Jamie Malmgren left, unfortunately. So I tried to ask Debbie, and I think Debbie was a little bit. She's got a lot on her plate right now. So that's something, Councillor Ramage, that I can definitely, I'm just trying to seek answers just on what that might look like. But I think we were looking to support them too from a council and an administration as far as just, gift basket as well. So, but yeah, if there's any specific questions, feel free to send them my way. Obviously you can CC Bob and the mayor, but would be happy to follow up on that for you.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess the next question would be for yourself and Councillor Peterson would be, what are some of the themes coming up at the chamber meetings that might be of interest to council? Anything that should be on our radars, either from yourself or Councillor Peterson?
Maybe not so much themes. I think they are going to try and go with virtual from Debbie's standpoint, and just my individual conversation this came out. They are going to try and do a virtual where we all order breakfast and do the breakfast before 9, kind of, I guess, virtually. I'm not sure how that's going to go as far as virtual, because I mean, networking is so important to have, I think, in person, but obviously there's things beyond our means. But the big thing that came out of just talking to Dylan in Martinsville is just that rapid testing from businesses standpoint. They're really there's a lot of cause for concern, and this is something I'll throw out to council too. Is we're obviously all keeping our eyes and ears open to just what the government does, but I think there's a lot of concern in that, both personally, but more so the business community, in the sense that one of the themes we've been seeing is just concern with, Saskatchewan's the fastest with getting the vaccinations going, and it looks like we're reopening, but you look to Alberta, not looking good, and Manitoba is closed till the end of May. So when you look at that, businesses are really, I guess, worried with, again, my role is not to stop tourism or people come in here to want to spend money, but it's cause for concern as far as if Albertans or Manitobans are coming in now that we're open for business and we're open doing things. There's just that concern within the business community is what the government provincially might be doing as far as maybe a quarantine, or providing that you've got your vaccine or proven a negative test to come into the province. There's just been a lot of concern that way, and I've considered reaching out just to kind of see to it that with Terry Jensen, just to kind of see if there's been any talks that way. I know the province doesn't want to maybe approach something like that yet, but it's just I guess a proactive thought that's been a prevalent thought across from some of those meetings. So that's something I'll throw at you, that if you have heard anything, that's great. Forward it along, but that's been a huge concern. As much as there's a lot to celebrate, it's a little bit scary times too in that regards for businesses, but also just the people of this province.
Yeah, I can imagine, particularly from a business standpoint as well. Anything to add, Councillor Peterson, or? Okay.
I also met with Debbie, and again, I think starting up and this changeover is taking a bit of time too. So I'm glad that you're working with the chamber, Brennan, to try and help and smooth some of those changeovers to happen.
For sure. And I think it's important too, now that got Councillor Peterson as well, and we'll make sure he's included on any meetings that we have, and he's been attending quite a few of the last few and providing a lot of insight. So I thank you for that, Councillor Peterson.
Any other questions for Brennan?
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, we will move down to communications. Erin.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. You'll see in my report, I included a summary on the volunteer awards from last year, written by our former city clerk. And the reason I included that is because a couple of weeks ago, I met with Mayor Philip Chuck and City Manager Smith to discuss this year's volunteer awards. So last year, all the planning that was put into it, you know, plans changed because of COVID. And so we're not really too sure which direction we should take this year. So we'd love to hear what council's thoughts are. Some ideas could be sticking to the virtual theme and doing a presentation later this year, or hosting you know, a small intimate event with the volunteer winners, or piggybacking on another event such as Canada Day. It's hard to say what events are going to take place this year, or if council has any other ideas, we'd love to hear it.
Okay, we'll open this up to questions, but I want to make sure, like giving a little bit of background with this. Like this was one of those ones we spent a fair amount of time as a committee looking at volunteer awards. We did all this build up and it never happened. And so in the way we wanted it, and it did have some challenges, even just using the golf course, using that lounge area, we didn't know if we would have enough room. So some of the things that we thought might be problems, we never actually had to deal with because the event never happened. It was very nice recognition at the end of it. We made sure that our winners got the recognition they deserve in many ways. And if you read through the full report there, it talked about the media, whether it was radio we did with the mayor, it was the pictures with their signage with the mayor. And so some of those things happened last year for that recognition, knowing that we were dealing with so much unknown at that time with COVID, as we are this year. So we're looking for some ideas that you might have, but might be for this year, but then even moving forward. And I know we were just doing some brainstorming. I said, I really want to hear what council, if there's any strong opinions on this, or if it's something that we just give back to administration to say, here's some recommendations. But I guess this is your chance. If you have strong opinions in this area, please bring them up for Erin to take back to City Manager Smith. Councillor C.
Thank you, Mayor Folchuk. I really think that as somebody that believes wholeheartedly in volunteering within the community, and I was fortunate enough to have been recognized at one point for that myself as well. I think that these events are extraordinarily important. And while I understand that we have to follow all of the COVID guidelines, I still think that there could be something that could be done, not dissimilar to what we're doing right now. Even is that if we had a live event, so to speak, streamed on YouTube, that would be a presentation similar to what's done before, obviously without the meals and such. Give people a photo op with Mayor Philip Chuck and whoever else we choose to have there, and let their families see that they're being recognized for their dedication to the community and what they're doing. I mean, is it perfect? Absolutely not. But it's still something that they can, take some pride in. We could share stills of that on social media, and it would certainly allow their families to, so to speak, be present for that, especially their kids who are the up and coming and would enjoy seeing mom or dad up there receiving some rewards for all the times that they're gone out of the house. I think something like that would be, I hate the COVID stuff as much as anybody else, but, remaining within that, I think it would still be important for these people to be recognized more so than just a plaque or a letter or something like that that says good job. So I would be a big fan of having a night where we have them come in one at a time, maybe a short little speech or recognition from Mayor Philip Chuck or from a council member, and then a quick, photo op and on they go. And just continue through that. I don't see why we would be able to get through that in a very short order.
And longer term, any comments about the longer term? Like what, because we were doing this major change, and again, we have a bit of time, and if you have comments, I would like to hear them. Councillor Seed, anything else? And then I'll
Yeah, I just think that I'm a huge fan of the volunteers that are in our community. While it's nice to have kind of a gala event for some of them, I personally don't feel that that's necessary. I think that it's a really good camaraderie the way that it was done in the past, to have some, have a barbecue or have something like that where everybody can kind of mingle and talk and be, the kind of the workers that a lot of people are within this community, is that they like to roll up their sleeves, take a lot of pride in our community and sharing it with our neighbors, and having that opportunity, even with their families there, again, once COVID restrictions are released. I'm more of a fan of the informal sit down and meet and greet, and then the presentations as I've personally seen in the past few years. But again, that's just my opinion.
Thank you. Councillor Beck.
Yeah, and certainly, like, there's been a lot of work, that's put into this. I'm looking back basically 2.5 years, I think, Gary, if if I recall correctly, when this committee was, let's say, like, established, and let's say looking at trying to revamp things. So what's a little bit certainly disappointing on that whole fact is, like, the whole vision that was first set out hasn't actually happened yet, right? So this year, certainly I'm like, to how things were done in the past, we knew that we wanted to see some changes there, because just as Councillor Seed there did say, this is very, very important. Like, these are volunteers stepping forward in the community, doing their best part to make the community let's say that much better, and and the recognition for that is something that's definitely deserved out there. So honestly, with this year, I would really like to see at least 1 year where that vision certainly takes place. I don't know that this is the year to have that happen. So just as like was mentioned earlier, this year, like, if there's any way to to consider doing something on like that virtual scape, I think that's something that would be, certainly, be nice to recognize, say, like, the winners for this year, and with this year to still, do something where let's say that full catch up is done, and certainly, like, let's say in person. We know that, certainly we've set aside, let's say, like, a large budgetary amount for that, and with this year, it'd certainly be nice to, at some point, try out that vision, see how it works, and whether or not, like, wholesale changes are certainly, let's say, going to be required again. But recognizing the fact that 2.5 years, since changes have certainly been thought about and whatnot, we just haven't had the chance to actually implement those. So it is a bit of a dilemma on that front, but I look forward to seeing what we can pull off.
Okay. Other comments about awards? And I'll just say a couple of things that I know, talking to City Manager Smith, I don't mind the idea of that big event of if it was a Canada Day or something where we can make sure people are there, and it might be the money is spent on a free barbecue or something. Like we can think of those types of things, because you think about how much money that we want people there, we want something there. So that's a different vision than what was brought out of the whole group. But I know after talking to people, some of it, that was going to be a sort of an intimate night of small numbers, really. And that was actually going to be our challenge because of the venue, but it also created the atmosphere by doing that. When the big part was going to be also making sure the recognition, because we all understand we want to recognize. That's actually my article next month here is about volunteering. And it's just that idea that people are giving of themselves to help your community be better and not expect anything in return. And so we have so many. The challenge this year, though, was even picking winners when you didn't have so many events happening. So I mean, there is no this and there's no that, no this. So and I think that's why Aaron all once saw that, okay, here's awards, just going, well, where do you start with something like this? And so I think we'll look for something in the fall potentially, but I think it's now looking at the awards, which ones actually make sense for this year, knowing we want to get back to the full slate as soon as we can. Councillor Ramage.
Just as you were talking, I had a thought, because even with that campaign with I hope I get his name right, Bryson, the 3-year-old that was picking up garbage in the skate park. I think maybe rather than picking winners, is there an opportunity through the volunteer awards to have something along the lines of the spirit of volunteering, the importance to the community, and maybe rather than an awards, highlighting some of some acts of service that that people have just stepped up and done to help keep the city what it is that we love.
Yeah, and those are great ideas. I agree with you that I wouldn't want to try and pick, unless you're going back to the previous year, which really isn't celebrating 2021 then, right? Which is, so I think maybe we figure out what is good for this year. And it might be what were some of the themes, and some of the themes were people stepping up to help our community. And we recognize that. Maybe there's something there, Councilor Ramage. So thank you. And I think that will help. Any other questions with this, Aaron, that you want to ask, or just any more general impressions with awards in general?
If like following this meeting, if you come up with a thought or opinion, you can just email either myself or City Manager Smith.
Yeah, and I was the only one of the group, because there was Councillor Schramm and Mayor Spence at the time, that sort of was the carryover of that, and even our city clerk of the time, Dawn. So I'm sort of saying here's where we were, but then we also had some questions how this was going to look. So this is a good time. If you have comments, please send them to Aaron. I think it's a time to sort of reimagine it a little bit and see what we can come up with. And the recognition, the social ways to do it now is second to none. So we can do that, and using our radio spots and everything else. So any more comments? Okay, I will let you go with that. Thank you, Aaron. So we have, yeah, go ahead.
I've also included the social media summary for you. And I just wanted to quickly address Councillor Seed's question last meeting about increasing engagement. So I included 3 upcoming communication campaigns that we're doing. I know that Brad had mentioned the bylaws, so we're going to do some educational pieces on that. And Brennan had talked about the economic development highlights, local business spotlights. So we'll be doing more of that coming up. And I'll also set up another photo showcase for residents, because that seems to be pretty popular with engaging them as well. So I just wanted to address that from the previous meeting.
Okay, any questions with that? Can you give us a little bit more specific what you're thinking with the business ones? You mentioned something about Sundays. Anything specific what we can sort of look forward to?
Well, pre-COVID, we used to do a lot of spotlights on local businesses, where Mayor Spence and the chamber chair would go visit and kind of highlight them on social media. And people really enjoyed that. People in Warman are very proud of the businesses we have here. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to do anything like that for the past year. So we're just gonna pick that up again and just highlight random businesses just to keep them front of mind for people and let people know that we support our business community. And hopefully outside investors will see that we're a very business friendly city. So maybe they'd, show interest in setting up shop here as well.
Great. Okay. And appreciate that. We've had the opportunity to do the odd one, but I agree. It's been very much. And I think one of the things that was brought up is that we want to make sure it even says every time we post one of those, if you want your business to be recognized, contact you and you'll set up the mayor and the chamber to meet and have this opportunity. So I think it's just making it easy for people, because that was the only complaint I did have is, well, why these businesses, not these businesses? And it was, well, just ask, we'll do it. So, I mean, we gladly do it. It's one of those things we want to make sure we highlight anyone that wants to be highlighted, but also highlight groups of types of businesses too. Councillor Seed.
Thank you, Mayor Filchuk. And thank you, Aaron, for the update on that. I do appreciate it. One of the things that I was curious, and maybe there's a reason that we're not, but when we are doing these highlights of businesses, on some of them, you know, as an example, when Atlas Outdoor moved, we highlighted their new address, which is fantastic. When we're highlighting businesses, can we also see if the business has a website and or a contact number that they would like to have publicly posted? Because I think a lot of times that what happens in order to promote them is that somebody, and I'm just going to pick on this one because it's relevant in your report, is that, you know, somebody might look at it and go like, Atlas Outdoor, well, like, what is that? I don't really know who they are, you know, and especially on social media, it'd be very easy there for them to click on it, go to their Facebook page or go to their website or whatever the case is, or even find a phone number. Because when we get lots of traction on social media, it's actually surprising that, you know, when you get 383 engagements and you've reached 5,500 people with that, when you Google it, it may actually bring up your link on our social media. So it helps to draw people into not only your posts on social media, but also to be able to directly connect with those businesses. Because I mean, it drives me a little bit nuts when you get people asking all the time, does anybody have the number for Atlas? It's like, well, in the time that you took to post that question and ask it, you could have Googled it. But at the end of the day, it's certainly something that I think would help to further promote those businesses a little bit and kind of catch people while they're in the moment, so to speak.
That's a great idea.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
So our next meeting of the whole is set to take place on Monday, June 14th, 2021 at the Brian King Center. Yes, that is our goal. We will be there. And so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Tooley.
I move to adjourn the Monday, May 17th, 2021 Committee of the Whole meeting.
Seconder. Councillor Seed. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great day. And if the conversation, some of the conversation, by all means, you can do a reply all email if people want to send those out. Okay. Have a great day.